So easy toss-up here. Who is Nick Gilbert?
It's not an easy toss-up. Do you want me to just start from the beginning? So he was born on July 21st, 1996.
Well, I remember him coming out, or almost not coming out, because his head was so big.
He came out 8.5 pounds with a 90th percentile head. And he was a pretty easy baby. Unless he was hungry, he was happy. We just were having the best time. And in fact, we thought it was so easy that we thought at 6 months that we'd have another.
We were so close in age, 18 months apart. I don't really have memories without him. He's probably my biggest teacher that I've had in my life, and he's my best friend.
He was the oldest, and he made sure everybody knew that.
The most hardworking and, consistent person that I've ever met.
Nick was just like a light in the room. If you're having a bad day, he's always gonna make it better.
I was just happy with my baby. We thought he was perfect, and he was perfect. He really had not necessarily been meeting some of his milestones. He was a little late to sit up, a little late to crawl, and he also had cafe au lait spots on his back. We just went into the pediatrician, and they said, let's just check this out. He had an MRI, and at that MRI, we discovered that he had an optic glioma, which is a tumor on the optic nerve. That was the first time we heard about neurofibromatosis. My personality is like, okay, I will worry about things when and if there is ever a problem. Where Dan, he goes 0 to 60 and wants to research and figure out a solution. And so he spent his time researching, and I didn't want to hear. I didn't know this part would be so hard.
I wanted to dive in and understand it because we needed to go into action. These tumors can grow on the end nerves pretty much anywhere. Some of the symptoms can be, physically disfiguring and cause a real tough life for these kids.
He was 6 in first grade. He had some learning disabilities. One of the things with an optic glioma is that you could lose your vision. And so we had his eyes checked, I think, every 6 months or so.
He played Little League for a couple years. And because he couldn't see well, he would get hit by the pitch a lot. And he prided himself that he led the league on hit by pitch. I think sometimes he would step in front of the plate, to be honest with you.
Every 6 months, it seemed to just get a little bit worse, and then 3 months later, and his vision had declined in the one eye significantly. The doctor's recommendations at that time was to start him on chemotherapy and just save his vision, basically.
Look, you can't control the cards that they're going to deal you, but you can control how you play them. Nobody can control what the genes are going to do, but your attitude and how you're going to fight it is all under your control. And he was just a beautiful example of that, and I think he prided himself on that.
How'd you like family camp?
Yeah.
What was your favorite part?
Throwing rocks.
Throwing rocks was your favorite part of everything?
He was turning 10. He had gone away to camp, his favorite place in the whole wide world.
Nick was definitely a troublemaker at camp growing up. Got away with everything. He actually did win the Dirtiest Camper Award 3 years in a row, but he would never think he was that dirty, but we had to force him in the shower.
I think camp, he could really be himself, you know, just being able to run and play and get away from all the confines that NF had for him.
Over the years, Nick kind of became like a celebrity at Camp Tanuga. On his birthday, they had a Nick Gilbert Day. They would do evening programs where people would dress up as like different versions of Nick and like do their best Nick Gilbert impression. It was a whole day, all of his favorite activities.
And I remember actually being at camp with him that summer, and he wasn't feeling well, and he was throwing up sometimes.
He was getting really bad headaches, and we didn't realize the seriousness of them.
I was sort of upset we didn't figure it out earlier and pull him out of camp earlier. I just, thinking of him sitting in a camp with headaches all day, that was the saddest part.
He had another MRI, and there was another tumor that had grown.
The doctor had said to us, we got to figure this out now. We've got to get this out of his head. You got to have brain surgery.
We found out on a Friday, told him on a Saturday, which I think was his birthday, his 10th birthday, and he had surgery on Monday. That was pretty scary. He went in and removed the tumor.
The surgery went really well, so he didn't have a rehab type recovery. He came home, and I think he came home and went back to life as a 10-year-old, which would be like him.
So we started working together, doing some exercise together. As he got older and the challenges became greater for him, his resolve got stronger. And I didn't have to push him as hard. He would push himself.
He wasn't a guy that shriveled up and kind of like went into himself. He was just very positive from the very beginning.
He had a mission. When Nick had his bar mitzvah, he made the choice to whatever he got monetarily, that half of that was going to go to Children's Tumor Foundation and half to the Cleveland Cavaliers Foundation for Children.
Whatever he was doing, he wanted to help, and he wanted to positively impact, and whether it's a person and what they're feeling or an organization like the Cavs.
And I don't know, I was just looking through my clothes one day and I saw a bow tie. I said, why don't we put a bow tie on him? So we put the bow tie on him, sent him out, and the rest is history.
Nick, you're the ambassador for the National Children's Tumor Foundation, and you've been dealing with a nerve disorder since you were born. Your dad called you his own personal hero. How's that make you feel?
Well, I mean, what's not to like?
He really became a brand unto himself, between the bow ties and the good luck charms. He absolutely was a foundational piece of the spirit of who we are as a franchise.
Nick was pretty special, very authentic, unique. He didn't care. He just wanted to talk. He was not shy. He would bring his friends.
And they all liked him. They all talked to him. He was knowledgeable about it.
He was just part of the team almost, I would say.
I remember that he was not afraid either to give you some tips on how to guard different players out there.
He would have post-game discussions with the head coaches that we've had over the years. He'd walk in and ask, well, why did we call timeout here and not here? And here's this kid with a severe disability sitting across from an NBA coach questioning his moves.
He had just been to Washington for a checkup of some kind, and his sight was really bad. And he said to me in the car, September, do you think I'm going to be able to drive?
By the time he was 14, and the kids were taking driver's training, everybody told us pretty much he was visually, legally blind, and so wouldn't be able to take driver's training. So that was definitely a bummer.
There was times where it was really sad that he'd be sitting here home one night by himself because he couldn't get a ride anywhere.
He was bummed, but he also then immediately said, well, that just means everybody else will drive me. It was a challenge of just making sure that, The kids understood, like, he didn't get special treatment because Nick was special. Everybody's special, right? And that Nick just had some extra needs.
So when we first had Nick, I would pick him up. I would take him to, pick him up from school and drive him to the tutor. And but he did like to listen to his rap music, loud and unedited, we should say.
International bring back the Concord. Numbers don't lie, check the scoreboard.
I used to tell him all the time, Nick, man, why don't we switch over to some country or something? He's like, nah, man, I don't like that stuff. He was quite the kid, man. Quite the kid. I might call him a kid, but he was a young man.
It was time for him to go to college. He had his sights set on Michigan State for many, many years, and he just was so determined, and he had such a work ethic. Like ACTs, he was visually impaired. He would have to have somebody read him the test and then write the answers for him. He had to work 10 times harder than everybody else.
We really struck a bond right away. It started out me helping him study and reading exams to him and that kind of thing. And then it turned into talking about sports, listening to music. We would hang out here and we would do a lot of studying and reading for exams and things. I can picture myself looking out that window and watching him on the moped drive away thinking, this is not good. This is not good.
That was my moped. That's who was driving him around. Yeah, if we needed a ride to class, or we had a class together, we'd go. If we needed food, we'd go. And a couple times I let him man the steering wheel. I don't think Jen loved it very much.
I found out a couple times that he walked down to the 7-Eleven over on Grand River, and they were a couple blocks off of it. And he walked by himself to go get some Cheetos or whatever he wanted, I don't know how you walk somewhere when you're blind, but I guess he figured it out.
He learned how to balance his life, whether it was school and studying and exams, or going to sporting events, or hanging out with friends, or going out.
He went to every single party he could. He went to every club he could.
He had a great time. And I'm learning more and more about just how good of a time he had.
He knew every promoter, every bar owner, every restaurant owner. He could cut just about any line at any bar in East Lansing.
He had his Rolodex where he'd call A to Z in his phone log.
I'm at my desk at work and it's 2 PM. Nick, what are you calling me for? Nick wants to go out.
You get a call from Nick and he's saying, hey, like, what are we doing tonight? What's the plans? Where are we going?
Nick was working his butt off during the day in order to get to the club that night. Brain surgery on Friday, hitting the club on Saturday.
He was having the best time in a fraternity, living with buddies, and he came home for Super Bowl Sunday, and he had been dropping things recently, and he tripped a little bit more than usual. But again, he's at school, so we don't see it.
We had a Super Bowl party at our house, and halftime, I come down into the lower level, and he had taken a spill down the stairs. And he was bleeding, I think, from his head. He hit his head. But that's when we took him in.
We took him to the hospital for stitches, just thinking he tripped, which he did. But the reason why he tripped is because he was off balance, because his tumors had been growing. The location was by the brainstem, and not the best place to operate.
When you have a tumor in the brainstem, that's like the worst place you can have it. I mean, brain tumors are one thing, but where you have it in the brain is critical for your chances of recovery.
That's when he went to Henry Ford for the laser ablation surgery.
Foot flat first, right? Come forward. Up.
They got most of it, but it was still there, still causing problems.
He went from being able to pretty much walk and live on his own to having his whole left side of his body just pretty much be paralyzed at the end of the surgeries.
All good. Look who's smiling.
That was definitely when I like really realized, and it really all like came full circle, and like I like grasped the weight of the situation, I guess, and like I just fully comprehended everything.
The daily battle that people don't see is the way that it affects every part of your life. Simple things, using the bathroom, walking. Nick, at some point or another, struggled with every bit of functional independence because of the NF. When we say that Nick was always positive, that is true, but that didn't mean that he didn't have an inner struggle with a lot of the battles that he was facing.
Always just trying to keep it as normal as possible so he could, be as independent as possible, have a normal life as possible. And so we always just kept moving forward and kept pushing forward.
A third of Nick's day typically would be some sort of therapy or home exercises. He almost had a full-time job in therapy.
He got really frustrated, but every few months I'd see him and I'd be like, Nick, you couldn't even get off a chair. And now I see you walking with assistance to the bathroom. And he was slowly just getting better and better and better. Like he was a totally capable person. It was just, he needed a little help getting around.
As things settled and he started feeling better, Jen and Steve and Nick and I all met at their house and we talked about what next steps were. And Nick said, well, I'm not sure I want to finish. He didn't need to, right? He didn't need to go. He didn't need to finish. And I said to him, you are a Spartan through and through. This has just got to happen. And I knew that was going to present a lot of challenges. His mobility was much different than it was before, along with some other challenges that he was having. And I said, but this is on you.
Finishing college was important to him. He wanted to finish college. He wanted to get to work, be done with college. And he went back to college. I don't know if most kids would have.
He made a decision, and the decision was, I'm not letting this screw up my life, and I'm gonna have fun, and I'm gonna live life like anybody else would wanna live.
It all stemmed around, Nick's confidence and his ability to, stay strong when, it's hard to do so. And I truly think it was significantly harder in his shoes, in his situations.
I remember his Instagram caption was like, 4 surgeries, COVID, radiation, chemotherapy, 6 years later, graduated.
He finished and he graduated and he did it, he did it differently, but he did it.
Nick lived every day to the fullest. He woke up every day with a purpose. And the purpose varied on a day-to-day basis, but whatever that was, Nick was going to do it 100%.
And where we have each other on speaker, and we just talk about what we're trying to do. What's the best career for us?
In the early days, I think it was more like, he's coming to the office to play basketball and shoot hoops, but really got to know him when he started working on our team 4 years ago. And so he worked at the family office with the business development team.
Nick was there like clockwork.
even coming off of chemo treatment in the morning or workouts with Joe Curry.
He would, have his chemo appointments, and then he'd be like, I'll see you tomorrow. Like, I have a cold, and I'm like, I'll see you in a couple of days, And I think that he was just stronger than the average person and cared more about how everyone else was doing around him than really talking about, himself and some of the challenges that he had in his life.
Nick wanted to attract things that he, was able to witness, and it's like, okay, why can't that be in Detroit?
He would go on this whole spiel of like, Detroit needs cuisine and music and more entertainment and more sports bars. And
he knew that the music scene in Detroit needed a studio. He met this guy, Che Pope, who was Kanye West's producer, and Nick befriended him like he did a lot of people. And he got this guy to open up a studio in Detroit.
Having this workshop incubator in Detroit will create tons of jobs. Each artist is like their own company, as well as the jobs, just more entertainment, more everything.
And then he really talked for years about a sports bar in Detroit. Why don't we have one?
He wanted a place where people can go and watch a game and hang out and order good food and stay, till 2 a.m. and be with friends.
And so we went through a lot of different iterations on how we could bring a sports bar or some place that just had good food, but like he felt comfortable and accessible for him, as his physical ailments kind of compounded over time.
Over the last year or two, he started to lose his hearing and also his eyesight even more.
Because of his disease and the status of those tumors that were growing in his brain slowly over time, it was one step forward and one step back.
This last couple years, I just referred to him as warrior, because that's what he was.
I haven't seen anything comparable to Nick in all the years I've had as a therapist.
Yeah, time and a half.
He couldn't see and couldn't hear, and that was just beyond unbearable for him and us. I mean, when we were going in the car, we put a model of a car in his hands so he'd know that we were leaving. We had to figure out ways to get to him. And for him, that was really devastating because his phone and his contact with his friends and everybody else, that was his lifeline to the world. And when he lost his hearing, that was the saddest part.
He'd want you there, even though at points it was hard for him to understand us, hard to hold conversations. We're starting to write letters on his hands and to communicate with him.
Him and I, we have this handshake. We would do the wiggity with our hands. So I remember those last couple months, going to see him, I would do the handshake and he would just yell out, "Kroll, is that you?" And I'd be like, "Yes, it is me, man."
Even towards the end, he would reach up and by the bed and put his hand on my bald head, and he knew who was there to see.
His friends flew in from all over the country. It was almost therapeutic for everyone to have come in to see Nick and spend that time together. And it helped all of his friends get through an impossible situation. Nick, in the worst of times, brought everybody together in a way that nobody could even fathom.
You don't ever want to say it out loud at the time, but we all sort of knew that this may be it. And Jennifer and my discussions were around, do we let him go or not? Do we keep trying? I mean, we tried for so many years, did so many things. At some point, it becomes just too painful to keep going with the treatments. He wrote us this text. It's not your guy's fault. I know you did everything for me. Which made me feel like he was ready.
I really miss it being the 5 of us. Just miss his presence for sure. And his ability to just like bring so much joy into my life and our family's life.
The last year, that's when we became like the closest we were. So I'd say that is what I miss the most, is just hanging out with him. So
I'd like to think that I added quality to his life, but I feel like I got more from him than he got from me.
He's left a little piece of himself and everyone that he's been around, everyone he's touched, everybody he's been close with. So he's definitely not forgotten.
I think it's, motivated everyone involved, whether it's, NF Ford or, finding a cure. I think he's still pulling strings from above.
Knowing he is going to change thousands of people's lives, and he had to be the one to sacrifice, I think brings me peace.
If we're able to get rid of that disease, millions of people will live because he didn't. That'd be quite a legacy in itself.
I don't have to like NF, but I don't have to be a victim just because I have NF. I did not choose to live with NF, but I do choose on how I live. And I choose to live life by enjoying every moment and to always look at the bright side of everything.
If we had not had a child born with NF, we may have never known that the disease existed. And unfortunately, and fortunately, Nick was born to us with NF. People go through life without knowing what their purpose is. We know. We are going to end NF.